Hey guys, this is Miss Nelson, and today you guys are going to be doing notes over multiplying and dividing fractions and mixed numbers. So if you open up your foldable that we folded in class, we're going to start on the top left, which is multiplying fractions. So we're going to write our rules first, and then we're going to go through and solve a problem. So the first thing you're going to write is that we don't get common denominator. Okay, if you want do not, that's fine as well. So you do not have to have a common denominator. Your second step, and you don't have to do this, you're going to have to simplify at one point throughout the process. I simplify before, and I do that by doing cross reduce. So you cross reduce if possible, and then you multiply the numerator by the numerator, and you multiply the denominator by denominator. Okay, and then you always simplify if possible. Okay, so like I said, you are going to be simplifying throughout this process, but if you simplify before, then when you multiply across, your answer should already be simplified as long as you simplified it as far as it would go. So I'm going to show you the cross-reduce way. So I have 3/4 times 6/15. I look and see if anything in the top has anything in common with the bottom. I know that 3 and 15 have something in common. They can both be divided by 3. So 3 divided by 3 is 1. 15 divided by 3 is 5. I also know that 4 and 6 can be divided by 2. So 4 divided by 2 is 2. 6 divided by 2 is 3. So I'm going to rewrite my fractions of what I have after I simplified. That leaves me with 1/2 times 3/5. So now I'm simply just going to multiply across. 1 times 3 is 3. 2 times 5 is 10. It should be simplified as long as you simplify it all the way, but double check. 3 and 10 do not have anything in common, so that is going to be my final answer. Okay, so now we're going to go down to the one beneath it. So again, now this is a mixed number, so our steps change just a little bit. Our first rule stays the same. Don't get common denominator. Change to improper fractions first, okay? So there is a new step that we did not do in the process above. So I'm going to come back to that in just a minute. We are still going to cross reduce. And we're still going to multiply the numerator with the other numerator and multiply the denominators together. And then, of course, we simplify if possible. Okay, so here's how that looks. So for around the world, I'm going to take it, and sometimes it's called check mark, sometimes it's called boomerang, but I'm going to turn these mixed numbers into improper fractions to make my rules and my process a little bit easier. To do that, I take the 5 and I multiply it by the 2, and I get 10. And then I add 4 to it. That leaves me with 14. My denominator of a 5 remains the same. Times, I'm going to do the same process to my second mixed number. 7 times 3 is 21. Plus 4 is 25 over 7. So now I just have two fractions again that I go back and I repeat my steps from the first process. So I look and see if anything has anything in common in top and bottom to cross reduce. I know that 5 goes into 5 one time, 5 goes into 25 5 times, 7 goes into 7 one time, 7 goes into 14 twice. So I'm going to rewrite what I have. If you don't need to rewrite the steps, that's fine. You can just multiply across and get your answer. So I have 2 over 1 times 5 over 1, which gives me 10 over 1, and you should know that that means that your answer is 10. So 10 is going to be my answer for that problem. Okay, so now we're going to go top right, and we're going to hit dividing. So you should see a pattern now. You don't need a common denominator. We are still going to, now, because we are dividing, okay, you should know by now that you want to turn your division problems into multiplication problems when dealing with fractions. So we do that by keeping the first fraction, changing my division sign to multiplication, and flipping the second fraction around to make its reciprocal. Then we pick up our multiplication steps. So we cross reduce if possible. We multiply the numerators together. And we multiply the denominators together. And then, of course, we simplify. Okay, so we're going to start by keep, change, flip. So I keep my first fraction the same. I'm going to leave it as 3/8. My division sign changes to a multiplication. And now I take this second fraction and I flip it around on top of itself, and we use the reciprocal. Okay, so if you haven't heard that word before, get used to hearing the reciprocal, because we're going to be using that a lot coming up, and that's going to become 12/9. Fix that 9. Okay, so now we simply pick up our multiplication steps. So I'm going to look and see if I can cross reduce anything. I know that 3 goes into 3 one time, 3 goes into 9 3 times. I know that 4 goes into 12 3 times. 4 goes into 8 twice. So I'm going to rewrite what I have. I have 1/2 times. Okay, now here you see that I have a 3 here and a 3 here. Those guys can also cancel out and become a 1/1. You do not just have to cancel diagonally, you can also cancel vertically, one on top of the other. And that leaves me with 1/2 as a final answer. So 3/8 divided by 9/12 is going to give you 1/2. Okay? All right, let's look at our last problem, our mixed numbers. So again, you don't have to get common denominator. And we have to still change to improper fractions. Anytime you're dealing with mixed numbers, you want to change them to improper fractions. We are still going to keep, change the sign, and flip my second fraction to use a reciprocal. Then we're going to multiply. You still want to cross reduce if possible. And then you're going to follow the rest of the steps, which is multiply the numerators together, multiply the denominators together, and then you are going to simplify if possible. Okay, so we're going to start by doing around the world. So 3 times 4 is 12. 12 plus my 2 is 14/3. You notice I'm bringing down my division sign because I'm not ready to do anything else. I have to turn these improper first. 9 times 2 is 18. 18 plus 4 is 22/9. So now I am ready to keep, change, and flip to get my reciprocal for my second fraction. So I keep my first problem, so 14/3. I change my division to multiplication, and now I'm going to flip around my fraction and get the reciprocal, which is 9/22. So now I'm ready to follow the rest of my multiplication. So I'm going to cross reduce if possible. I know 3 goes into 3 one time, 3 goes into 9 3 times. I know that 2 can go into both 14 and 22. So 14 divided by 2 is 7. 22 divided by 2 is 11. So I look and see if I have anything else that can cancel. I do not, so I'm going to rewrite 7/1 times 3/11. That gives me 21/11. So what you notice now is that this has formed an improper fraction. 21 over 11 is improper. So I need to divide to get it back into a mixed number. So I'm going to put 21 inside the house, 11 outside. I know 11 goes into 21 one time. That leaves me with 10. Instead of adding a decimal and carrying it down, this 10 becomes my numerator, and my 11 that was out here becomes my denominator. So my answer is 1 and 10 elevenths when I divide 4 and 2/3 divided by 2 and 4 ninths. So make sure you come with questions, so that if you have questions, I can clear up any misunderstanding, and that way we're ready to practice the next day in class. Have a good day.